What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. With Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 150 having hit us, and with Jason Aaron's upcoming relaunch of the series at IDW, I kind of wanted to go back and take a look at some of the bigger things that had happened in the series over the course of its 150 issues leading up to now. And one of those things was how Master Splinter divided the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
During IDW's initial launch of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, we were introduced to a version of Splinter that was very familiar to anyone who had ever read the old comics or watched the old animated series. Splinter was a very warm and loving father figure. But one thing that was very different about him, and the more you read of that series and you kind of look back with the benefit of hindsight, you start to see that there was something going on with Splinter that didn't add up. And not to say that it was, not adding up from a narrative perspective, but something that you could tell was different about the Splinter than almost any other version of Splinter we had seen before. This was a Splinter who had a dark side, and it made sense considering the new revised origin of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles at IDW. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can check out this video up here and learn all about it. But in this new universe, Splinter was once a member of the Foot Clan, a high-ranking member of the Foot, mind you, and was even at one point allies with Oroku Saki. And despite his death and reincarnation and subsequent mutation, that version of himself has always been there. He was a ninja through and through. Now, during Splinter's time as Hamato Yoshi, one thing that might fall under the radar is that Splinter was not always the cool, calm, collected one. And it kind of makes sense when you think about the other turtles. They are all, in a lot of ways, facets of his personality passed down as he and Tang Shen gave birth to them. Leonardo is, for all intents and purposes, the idealized version of himself, whereas Donatello is Hamato Yoshi's analytical mind. Michelangelo is more of a projection of his life after meeting Tang Shen, and of course Raphael is the anger and rage that Hamato Yoshi had to fight against within himself when he was a member of the Foot. Hamato Yoshi was a very angry person, very prone to leaping off into fits of rage and flying off the handle no differently than Raphael, which is why I feel Splinter and Raphael have always had this very interesting familial bond where Splinter may always not like the way Raphael acts. He knows where it comes from, and in the IDW universe, Splinter made a lot of efforts to try to understand Raphael, and more importantly, let Raphael know that Splinter knew where he was coming from. And of course, even heroes mess up, and Splinter is no different. Splinter, at various points throughout the IDW run, had made questionable decisions that kind of let you know of the direction he was going. We saw him help Old Hob, the Turtles' arch nemesis at the time, and the same villain who separated the Turtles from Raphael early on when they began their mutation, ultimately robbing the Turtles of their familial bond for quite some time. And Splinter helped Hob obtain mutagen from Stockgen, knowing what Hob would likely do with it, but he did this because he wanted to secure Hob's help in taking down his former ally, Oroku Saki, aka the Shredder. We also saw him make an attempt to trick the Turtles in a vicious brawl where he tried to prepare the Turtles for the fight against Shredder, but ultimately proved he had hidden techniques from them, and more importantly, they weren't even in on any of this. He fought the Turtles as if he were the Shredder, and in a lot of ways, once he revealed his true nature, that it was Splinter behind the mask, it made the Turtles question everything they knew about him. Splinter was also more assertive in his resolve to unalive Shredder, something that the Turtles had wrestled with for about roughly a little more than 40 some odd issues. Ever since Shredder was put on the playing field in IDW's universe, the Turtles just didn't know how to deal with him. They didn't want to unalive him because at the end of the day, that's not what they're about, but they also didn't want to be unalived by him either. And while some Turtles versus others were more open to the idea of taking Oroku Saki down once and for all, some of the ones who weren't terribly interested in the idea were Leonardo and Michelangelo, really more Michelangelo than anyone else because he didn't want to become a killer. But Splinter, at the end of the day, knew what needed to be done. Eventually, when it came down to it, Splinter would ultimately be the one to take out Shredder in one-on-one combat, fighting him straight up in a duel and defeating him once and for all, to the point that Saki, in his defeat, realized he couldn't go on living this way, that he was shamed, and that the only way to make things right was to commit seppuku. And Splinter would even act as his second. After Shredder's death, Splinter would become the one to lead the Foot Clan going forward. And while this seemed like a natural progression for Splinter, this was only truly the start of him going down an even darker path. No longer being the wise mentor and father figure to the Ninja Turtles, he became a cold and calculating mastermind. He even led the Foot in a way that was antithetical to his teachings of the Turtles, carrying out assassinations, acting as a crime boss in a lot of ways, and ordering his Foot into all-out war with the peaceful Triceraton refugees. In a lot of ways, you could say Splinter ran the Foot Clan no differently than any other actual ninja clan, and in some ways you could probably even make a case for him running the Foot Clan no differently than how a Yakuza gang would be run. It's not to say that Splinter wasn't still a good person, he just made very questionable choices, and in a lot of ways undermined his own sons, and in a lot of cases directly fought against them and opposed them, especially in instances where he was working with Agent Bishop, a guy whose whole job was to take the Turtles down. And you could honestly say a lot of this was just due to Splinter being hungry for power, that old Hamato Yoshi was still in there, the one prior to meeting Tang Shin, who had ambitions for leadership and power, and no self-control over his own rage and dark emotions. You could make a strong case for that, even to the point where he had even moved characters like Jenica away from himself, someone who was very loyal to Splinter, but even eventually she saw the error in Splinter's ways. The old Splinter was in there, lost, and in a lot of ways trapped behind the person he used to be, the father figure he'd become, and the legacy he left behind in the Foot that he felt tugging at him at all times. Eventually, he'd come to his senses, but unfortunately, he'd become the Splinter we knew and loved again all too late, dying in the 100th issue of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, having sacrificed himself to bring back the Turtles' arch nemesis, the Shredder, and in doing so, unleashing a blast of cosmic energy from beyond the hereafter that defeated the Great Dragon, who is the father of Kitsune and the Rat King, stopping it from burning the world in its wake. Now, if you're wondering why Splinter would sacrifice himself to bring back Oroku Saki, well, that's something I'm going to talk about in another video coming up very soon. You guessed it, obligatory channel outro time. If you're not subscribed to the channel, consider doing so. Clicking that subscribe button and tapping that notification bell ensures that you get more videos just like this one, and you don't miss any of my other content that I drop throughout the week, plus my live streams every Thursday and Saturday. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you click that like button, keep it plus ultra, and sound off in the comments.